দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ফোর্থরাইটে। এই অনুষ্ঠানে আমরা কথা বলি বিভিন্ন সেক্টরের বিশেষজ্ঞদের সাথে যারা বাংলাদেশ নিয়ে ভবিষ্যৎ পরিকল্পনা ও তাদের অভিজ্ঞতা নিয়ে আলোচনা করেন। 3 বছর পার করল রোহিঙ্গা শরণার্থী সংকট। করোনা মহামারীতে মানুষের জীবন ও জীবিকা যেমন ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত, এরই মধ্যে অন্যরকম জটিলতার মুখে রয়েছে বাংলাদেশে আশ্রয় নেওয়া রোহিঙ্গারা। এসব নিয়ে কথা বলবো আজকের ফোর্থরাইট অনুষ্ঠানে। আপনাদের সঙ্গে আছে আমি সৈয়দ আশিক রহমান। আজকের বিষয় 3 years of genocide and ethnic cleansing of Rohingya people। আর এই বিষয়ে আলোচনার জন্য আমাদের সঙ্গে যুক্ত হয়েছেন বাংলাদেশের জাতিসংঘের আবাসিক সমন্বয়ক মিয়া সেপ্পো, বাংলাদেশের জার্মানির রাষ্ট্রদূত হিজ এক্সেলেন্সি পিটার ফারেনহাউস এবং বাংলাদেশের জাপানের রাষ্ট্রদূত হিজ এক্সেলেন্সি নাওকিতো। Very welcome, Honorable Ambassador Mr. Naokito, Mr. Peter and Madam Seppo at Fortnite. Firstly, I would like to start with a common question to all of you. Began with Mia Seppo. Despite the crisis entered the 4th year, Myanmar has not taken a single Rohingya back till today. What is the reason behind? Basically, whose failure?
Thanks. Thank you for the question, and thank you also for the program. And I'm very pleased to join the excellencies in speaking about this issue. It's important to keep the spotlight on this crisis and to make sure that it doesn't become a forgotten crisis. Repatriation is a process. It's not a one-off. Bangladesh has made efforts over recent years on repatriation, including in dialogue with Myanmar to clear names. While some of the refugees were cleared to go back, it is clear from asking them and others that while they want to return, they do not yet feel that the conditions in Myanmar are conducive for their safe and sustainable return. And the UN actually shares this view. Refugees have spoken about the most basic of conditions that they would want to see to enable them to go back, such as their safety and security being secured, access to basic services and rights, and of course, a clear and voluntary pathway to citizenship. I think this 3rd year mark is also an important reminder to everybody that this is a problem that started in Myanmar and the solutions need to be found in Myanmar as well. And the responsibility for creating conditions that the refugees will trust to go back actually lies with Myanmar. What we can do is support, what the international community can do is in a coordinated manner engage and encourage this process to start. And what we all can do while the Rohingya are generously hosted in Bangladesh is enable them to gain the skills and capacities that would facilitate their successful reintegration in Myanmar in terms of livelihoods and skills and engaging when they come back. Let me just finish by picking up on your word failure. While I understand that you used the word, I think it's important that we keep in mind that we cannot give up. We have to keep trying, we have to keep looking for durable, lasting solutions, and we have to keep that going. So while it is challenging, while it is complex, let's look at what can be done. Let's look at what has been done. Let's recognize the efforts made and not always put the spotlight only on the failure.
I'll come back to you again. Ambassador Peter, Myanmar has not taken a single Rohingya back till today.
Thank you very much for organizing this event today. It's always a pleasure for me to be with RTV, one of the best television stations in Bangladesh.
Thank you.
Indeed, it's very important to think back in the last 3 years since the Rohingya had to leave their homes in Myanmar and come to Bangladesh. The international community is trying its best to find a way forward. Of course, globally, we are confronted with so many different crises and conflicts where also a lot of violence is being perpetrated. It is difficult sometimes to keep all the situations, to remain equally focused in all the situations. In Myanmar, they took and found shelter in Bangladesh. And I completely agree with Mrs. Seppo, the resident coordinator, that solutions have to be found in Myanmar so that the Rohingya can return to their homes. so that they can return voluntarily. And for that, they need to be sure that their safety is guaranteed when they return to their homes. So I think there's no doubt that we need to work with Myanmar to find solutions.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you again. Ambassador Naokito, tell about the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. It's so nice to be back to your program. So thank you very much for having me. And I think it's really significant that RTV has this program on the day of the third anniversary of this influx of refugees from Rakhine State to Bangladesh. I really would like to appreciate, first of all, those measures taken by the government of Bangladesh for over the last 3 years to accept them and to provide shelter them and to do humanitarian assistance activities for them. But for the lasting solution, as my previous speaker said, it's really crucial to have an enabling environment for repatriation. So it's crucial to see the start of the process of repatriation sooner rather than later. There has been this framework of dialogue between government of Bangladesh and the government of Myanmar, which hasn't so far yielded any positive result in spite of the efforts of those involved. So I do very much hope that through this dialogue, there will be positive steps and agreement between the two parties. I know they are talking about this new idea of coming up with a pilot project focusing on specific village and so forth. So they are trying very hard and tenaciously to reach some sort of agreement to initiate the process of repatriation. I really very much hope this moving forward, and Japan will continue to provide any support needed to see the progress of this process. One example is a visit of Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi to Myanmar. He was in Yangon yesterday. So as part of his tour in ASEAN countries, he visited Myanmar yesterday, and he had a chance to meet with the State Councillor Do Aung San Suu Kyi, as well as the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Service of Myanmar, General Min Aung Hlaing. So Mr. Motegi expressed his strong desire that this early repatriation will take place and enabling environment will be created. So this is a message the Japanese Foreign Minister conveyed to the highest echelon of the Myanmar government, including the top of Tamado. Actually, Min Aung Hlaing, the general of Tamado, said that his intention will be continuing to work as the defense services to solve that problem. So this doesn't bring us anywhere, but at least we communicated this message to the highest echelon of Myanmar military forces, and it's really important to continue to push them so that they would come back with measures to bring about enabling environment so that Rakhine Rohingya refugees will be confident enough to come back to Rakhine State, knowing that there will be an environment for them to come back.
Thank you. I'll come back to you again. Now, Mia Seppo, Bangladesh wants to start the initial transfer of Rohingyas to Bhasan Char Island, though there were still some observations from foreign partners. What is UN statement?
Thanks. We have been engaged in the issue on Bhasan Char since 2018, so there has been a continued dialogue and efforts of engaging constructively on this issue. The UN recognizes that the government of Bangladesh has done a considerable investment in Bashar Char, and that the rationale behind doing so was very much to look into some of the challenges that we do have in Cox's Bazar in terms of congestion and in terms of some of just the whole area and the location of the camps. That said, we have from the very beginning been very clear on the fact that the UN needs to undertake a comprehensive technical and protection assessment mission, and that is a condition for the UN to engage operationally on the island as a place to host refugees. In our conversations with the government, we have also emphasized the fact that the move to Bashar Char should be voluntary. It should be based on a process of engaging with the Rohingya that gives them the accurate and timely information for them to determine and make their free and informed decision on relocation. Now, of course, we are in a slightly different situation in the way that Bangladesh very generously did a rescue at sea, and we now have 306 Rohingya who actually are on Bashar Char and who are sheltered on Bashar Char. The UN has informed the government that we are ready to undertake a protection visit to Bashar Char for that very purpose and to see how they are doing, what are the conditions, also recognizing that these are people who went through a lot before they were given shelter there, and therefore we also have some protection concerns around that. So as soon as we get the green light from the government, we are ready to undertake that mission, and we certainly hope that will happen as soon as possible.
Well, thank you very much. Excellency Peter, countries like Germany and the Netherlands are besides Bangladesh on Rohingya issues. Do you feel hope Myanmar will implement its commitment to take back the Rohingyas?
Well, I can speak for the whole European Union, as Germany has the presidency of the European Union for this second half of 2020. And I can assure you it's not only Netherlands or Germany, but the whole European Union and its member states stand besides Bangladesh. We have the 3 points that we're working on. One is the humanitarian assistance. And there I think we are really trying our best together with the UN and its agencies and the other partners. The second one is, of course, to facilitate the return of the Rohingya to their homes. I think efforts are underway, but we know what we have to achieve. And the third one, of course, is accountability and justice. There also, we have now seen the International Court of Court of
Justice.
Criminal Justice and the International Court of Justice and the Independent Investigative Mechanism in Myanmar have taken up proceedings. So we have to advance parallel on all 3 areas. I'm actually confident that in the long term, the Rohingya will be able to return home. But as I said, this can only be voluntary, and the Rohingya will only be ready to go home if they feel it's safe to do so.
Exactly.
So this is what we all have to work on. We need the 2 countries, Myanmar and Bangladesh, to talking to each other. We need other stakeholders to take their share of the responsibilities. But let me come back to what the resident coordinator said. One point I would like to take up. It was great. We're really grateful to Bangladesh to have rescued these boat people from the Indian Ocean, to have brought them to Bangladesh, to Bashar Char. Not every country around the Indian Ocean has been doing this, so this was really great by Bangladesh.
Thank you.
These have been now on Bashar Char, and we really need a protection mission by humanitarian experts to come to Bashar Char and to talk to these 306 refugee boat people. This is very important, and we really hope that this can happen very soon.
Ambassador Naokito, how Japanese government evaluates Bangladesh on Rohingya issues? And how does Japan government assist Bangladesh?
I think Bangladesh has been doing really wonderful work. First of all, this decision to accept more than 1 million Rohingya refugees on their soil and provide the shelters and protection in cooperation with international organizations as well as non-governmental organizations. Of course, I've had a chance to visit the camp area of Rohingya displaced persons. So I would say that this is one of the most successful international humanitarian interventions to house such a large number of displaced persons. So I would like to give full credit to Ms. Mia Seppo and her UN team, as well as RRC and the government officials of the government of Bangladesh, who are really working hard at the forefront of these interventions. So, of course, the situation inside the camp needs to improve living conditions and hygienic situation, as well as education. So, but in spite of this fear and concern that there might be an explosion, this outbreak of coronavirus infection. But as far as I have gathered, that has not happened. Again, this is thanks to the efforts by the government here,
exactly.
Also coordinated efforts of UN agencies. So I think we really need to continue to keep this level of cooperation between the government of Bangladesh and the international community. I think in total, Japan provided 120 million US dollars worth assistance to this Rohingya refugee situation. And at the moment, 7 Japanese non-governmental organizations are active in the camp area with the financial assistance of the Japanese government. And on top of that, I must stress that there are as many as approximately 20 Japanese nationals who are working for UN agencies.
Thank you.
So this is very unusual, but maybe because of this country, Bangladesh, so Japanese people really like to work here. So that's one of the reasons why so many Japanese, international officials working for the betterment of Rohingya refugees. So this is something I want to share.
I think Mia Seppo must add something with this. Mia Seppo.
Well, I think this is really the opportunity to recognize that what has been achieved during these past years in Cox's Bazar, in terms of that initial shock and dismay and chaos and where we are today, is really the result of a lot of people working together, a lot of dialogue between the humanitarian community, the international community, the diplomatic community, and the government of Bangladesh at national and local level. So if you want to talk about something which is a joint result that we should collectively be proud of, it's what has been achieved, and obviously collectively we need to look for solutions. I think what is also very important to keep in mind that an equally important part of the response is the host community. The ones who feel mostly in their daily lives this reality of a very great number of refugees is the Bangladeshis living in the host communities. And as we are often reminded, in some of these areas being outnumbered by the Rohingya. So the host communities is equally part of the support from the international community. And therefore, that is a way of making sure that Cox's Bazar stays a peaceful place, and we collectively look at those challenges. I want to recognize in particular when it comes to the response to the COVID-19, that indeed there was some very decisive early action that was taken together that has indeed slowed down the spread tremendously. Let's hope it stays that way. The support to the COVID response has equally benefited the Bangladeshis in the host communities as the refugees. And I want to give one example because, of course, we talk about the testing, we talk about the ICU unit in Sadar, we talk about the Upazila health complexes. But allow me just to mention one example where it really comes together. There has been some 2 million cloth masks prepared by Rohingya tailors. 2 million. Out of these, after a distribution to the most vulnerable in the camps, there's been at least 500,000 of these distributed to the host communities. And there's been a lot of effort of actually giving information of how do you wear the mask correctly and why do you wear a mask. So very much coming together to tackle this new and unforeseen challenge of a pandemic.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Ambassador Mr. Peter, recently British government has imposed sanctions on 2 Myanmar generals on Rohingya issues. Do you think this step is enough to pressure the military leaders of Myanmar? What is German authority stand for?
If I remember correctly, I think the European Union was the first to impose sanctions on some responsible actors in Myanmar. Of course, the UK has done so, the United States has done so. The European Union also has an embargo on armament shipments to Myanmar. And Germany, in its bilateral relationship with Myanmar, has decided to suspend development cooperation with Myanmar, development assistance to Myanmar, as a reaction to the acts of the Myanmar side on the Rohingya. But of course, it's not as easy as that. You cannot only work through sanctions. The approach must be much wider. There must also be not only sanctions, there must be incentives, there must be cooperation. It's a much broader approach that we need to change course by the decision makers in Myanmar. Also, we have elections coming up in November in Myanmar, and hopefully we will see a strengthening of the civil authorities in Myanmar. So sanctions alone will not work. That's my personal opinion. It could be necessary to also exert pressure, but as I said, it must be a mix of different instruments to achieve the return of the Rohingya.
Well, thank you very much. We'll talk more after a short break. দর্শক দেখছেন RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ফোর্থরাইট। এই পর্যায়ে নিচ্ছি বিরতি, ফিরছি একটু পরেই। আমাদের সাথেই থাকুন। দর্শক আবারও আমন্ত্রণ ফোর্থরাইট অনুষ্ঠানে। আজকে কথা বলছিলাম মিয়ানমারে রোহিঙ্গা নিধন ও জাতিগত গণহত্যার 3 বছর নিয়ে। ওয়েলকাম এগেইন all of you at ফোর্থরাইট। Madam Mia Seppo, UN agencies and all humanitarian organizations working for the Rohingya response have also been working for the local community. How does this initiative may work to keep trust among local people on Rohingya?
Thank you for this important question. I think I already touched upon it in my previous response.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, it is the response. Responding to the needs of the host communities is a key part of the response, and it will continue to be. For the COVID response, it has been absolute equal priority to both, including then the institutional long-term health strengthening of the health sector in Cox's Bazar district. And this is how we will continue to work in terms of looking at those most in need in the host community, looking at the refugees, but of course also engaging with the government of Bangladesh in terms of the longer term development vision for this district, which is a bit different from other districts in Bangladesh, and how we can join forces in tackling some of the impact of the refugee crisis, but also some of the more long-term challenges of Cox's Bazar district.
Well, thank you. Mr. Ambassador Naokito, an independent panel set up by the Myanmar government to look into charges of atrocities against Rohingya Muslims. Do you think this initiative may help on repatriation?
I think you are talking about 2 aspects. One is accountability issue, and another is repatriation issue.
Exactly.
So, but I think accountability issue itself would not directly lead to repatriation, but certainly if we see progress on the accountability front, then that will pave the way for the enabling environment for repatriation. So in that sense, I think as Peter suggested earlier, so those important factors should make progress in parallel manner. So I think it's really important for us to encourage Myanmar government to take measures so that they would take their own responsibilities and to address a very, very important issue of accountability. So this independent commission of inquiry set up by the government of Myanmar came up with a report which actually talked about some existence of atrocities and identified some of those culprits and so forth. So I understand that now Myanmar government has tabled the amendment to the Defense Services Act so that the court-martial would be able to work on some criminal investigation as well as prosecution on the basis of the recommendation of ICOE. So it's very important if they show some progress along this line with transparency. How procedures are taken and what sort of punishment has been done. These things need to be published and disclosed. So with transparency, if we see progress of the implementation of recommendation of ICOE, this will be contributing to the implementation of a provisional order by ICJ by the Myanmar government. I think that's a very, very important step to address the issue of accountability. And actually, this is another message our Foreign Minister Motegi conveyed to both State Councillor Do Aung San Suu Kyi and Commander of Tamado General Min Aung Hlaing yesterday.
Well, thank you very much. Excellency Mr. Peter, the German government has made a contribution of $4.5 million to the WFP in its continuous support to the critical work for Rohingya. How much optimistic you are for further assistance?
Thank you for mentioning it. This was the last contribution. Overall, I think we have, if you look at the assistance for the refugees and for the host communities, we're somewhere way beyond $100 million so far. And of course, Germany, and I think I can talk for all the European member states in the European Union, we will stand by the side of Bangladesh government and the people, the host communities, the Rohingya, to give support. There's no doubt about it. But we need to be closely aligned, the government and the donors who want to help the government of Bangladesh. And as I said, we in order to progress, we also need to see some progress on some issues. And the most urgent for us at the moment is to have the so-called protection mission that some humanitarian experts can visit. They finally would be able to visit Bashar Char and talk to these refugee boat people on the island and to look at the situation over there. This is what we need from our side. Because, the international media have been very critical of Bashar Char. And I personally am quite open, but we need more information and we need a good cooperation on this.
But what is the reason behind?
The reason is that people who write about Bashar Char in the international media, they obviously have not been there. They know it is an island which just came to be, I think it was 10 or 12 years ago. This is why, we need more information. And, we have a great responsibility towards these refugees. We need to protect them. the Rohingya. You know, your government, we also assisting you. We have a great responsibility for their safety. And I absolutely agree with you. And this why I think that this protection mission would be an important first step, to move forward on this. So
Yes.
I hope that we can see some progress on this very soon.
Thank you very much. We are almost end of the program. Before ending, we would like to take your conclusion remarks, starting from Mia Seppo.
Thank you. I think one thing that I want to recognize, because this was actually publicly announced by the Foreign Secretary yesterday in another event among these many reflecting on the 3-year mark, is we want to welcome the government's decision to turn the internet back on, 3G, 4G. This is a really important decision at this point in time when so many children all around the world are out of school. Internet is important to allow for learning. At this point in time of COVID, getting timely, life-saving information is absolutely critical. And for us to run a more effective and safe humanitarian response, and for the Rohingya to be able to be in touch with family and friends, this is a decision by the government that we very much welcome. And last but not least, I think thanks all around. I mean, the international community, the two excellencies who are part of this program, so many for staying engaged in this complex crisis and for the generous support that has been there to provide the response. This has been one of the better funded humanitarian responses the past 3 years. And of course, to the government of Bangladesh and the host communities. We should not tire. We should not let this be a forgotten crisis, and we have to all stay engaged.
Thank you, Ambassador Naukito. Any conclusion remarks from your side?
Thank you very much. So 3 years have passed. And like I said, this is one of the successful international interventions to protect displaced persons. But as newspaper reported, so 60,000, 70,000 newborn baby are there. So the situation is changing there. So we shouldn't be satisfied with the sort of status quo there. So I do really hope that this 4th year will be the year of the further progress. So further progress of the situation inside the camps so that the living conditions, safety and security of Rohingya refugees will be improving. I very much hope that Japan will be able to support and participate in international interventions on the island. But in order for us to see this, first, UN needs to send this protection mission as well as evaluation assessment mission. So there is a process to go through. So I'm really hoping that there'll be a good level of cooperation to be achieved between the government of Bangladesh and the United Nations team here. So this would require a very, rather strenuous work between the two sides maybe, but only with the progress of the work between UN and government agencies, international community, will be able to do interventions on the island. And lastly, but most importantly, we really need to see the progress of repatriation process.
Exactly.
So this should be the year. We should start the process of repatriation to Rakhine State, regardless of the number of the people. But we should start the process so that we can make the 4th year the year of further progress for the benefit of Rohingya refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Peter, your final comments, please.
Well, everything has been said, and the point is the situation of the Rohingya must never be forgotten. We have to redouble our efforts, giving humanitarian assistance to Bangladesh, the host communities and the refugees. We must redouble our efforts to create conditions that the Rohingya can return. And of course, we must look for and find justice for the crimes that have been committed. But finally, I would like to say the hospitality of Bangladesh and in accepting the Rohingya here in this country 3 years ago really reflects the vision of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, this great personality. I'm sure he would have been the first one to say, let's welcome our brothers and sisters from Rakhine State, the Rohingya, and let them welcome here and shelter them until they can return.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your statement. Thank you very much, Excellency Peter Naokito and Mia Seppo for being with us. দর্শক, বর্তমান রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যা বাংলাদেশের কাছে তো বটেই, সারা বিশ্বের কাছেই এক জ্বলন্ত সমস্যা হিসেবে বিদ্যমান। সাম্প্রতিককালে যে 11 লাখেরও বেশি রোহিঙ্গা নিজেদের মাতৃভূমি ছেড়ে বাংলাদেশে আশ্রিত হয়েছে, তার মূলে ও নৈপথ্যে রয়েছে ইতিহাসের এক দীর্ঘ ধারাক্রম। যদিও আজকের অতিথিরা বলেছেন ছোট আকারে হলেও এবছরের প্রত্যাবাসন শুরু করা উচিত। এই বাস্তবতায় রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যার সমাধান কি হয় তার দিকে তাকে বিশ্ববাসী। তবে রোহিঙ্গা শরণার্থীর প্রত্যাবাসন হোক স্থায়ী, দীর্ঘমেয়াদী এবং সম্মানের, সেই প্রত্যাশা শেষ করছি আজকের ফোর্থরাইট। এতক্ষণ সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে।
For more updates, subscribe and press the bell icon on YouTube app and never miss another update.